Okay, so we're diving deep into a case today that's been all over the news in Spain.
Yeah, this one's really got people talking.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It involves Paloma Pinedo and her daughter, India. They were tragically murdered back in January of 2023.
Terrible.
And we're actually going to be using court documents for this deep dive. We've got the transcripts from the trial of David Maroto.
Oh, wow. So this is ongoing.
It is Paloma's partner. He's the accused in this case, and the prosecution is really going after him. I mean, they're not holding back,
Really?
calling him a machista, compulsive liar, among other things.
Wow. It sounds like they're really taking a strong stance right out of the gate.
Totally. And, you know, that term machista, I think it's important to kind of unpack that a bit, because that's not just your average, everyday sexist kind of label.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It has much deeper roots in Spanish culture.
Exactly.
But
So for our listeners who might not be as familiar with the term, could you give us some background on what machismo really means in the Spanish context?
sure. So machismo in Spain, it's deeply connected to this historical and societal structure where men have traditionally held a lot of power and dominance,
Right.
and women were expected to be subservient, their place kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like a whole system almost.
Exactly. It's a system. And so when the prosecution called Maroto a machista, they're not just trying to insult him. They're actually using that term very strategically.
It's like painting a picture of him.
Exactly. They want to paint a picture of him as someone who embodies this toxic masculinity and therefore capable of committing this horrific crime.
Right. And it's interesting because they're really leaning into this idea of his character as being central to the crime.
Yes, definitely.
One thing that really stood out to me in the court documents was this term, ensañamiento. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, ensañamiento.
Okay, so ensañamiento, which basically means the cruelty of the crime.
Right.
Like they're saying he didn't just commit the murders, but he went above and beyond to inflict pain and suffering.
It's a really, really crucial legal concept in Spain because ensañamiento can actually mean the difference between a regular murder charge and something much more serious like aggravated homicide,
Oh, wow.
which obviously carries a much heftier sentence. So the prosecution is definitely using this concept of ensañamiento to their advantage. They're trying to establish a pattern of behavior and really make this case as strong as possible.
So with the prosecution coming in so hard, what kind of defense do you think Maroto's lawyers could even try to mount?
Well, it's a tough spot for the defense. I mean, they're up against some pretty serious accusations, but there are a few strategies they might try.
Yeah.
One thing they could do is try to argue that this machista label is prejudicial.
Okay.
They could say it's meant to unfairly sway the jury's opinion.
It's like they're trying to play on emotions rather than sticking to the facts.
Exactly. And they might even try to present Maroto as a victim of circumstance, maybe suggest that someone else was involved or that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
But do you think it would be possible for them to completely detach him from this machista label, considering, the cultural context in Spain? We're not just talking about an individual here.
That's the thing. This label, it's not coming out of nowhere, right? It's tapping into these deeply rooted ideas about gender roles and power dynamics in Spanish society.
So it's almost like the case itself is putting machismo on trial in a way.
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it. This case is forcing everyone to confront these uncomfortable truths about Spanish society and how these ideas can manifest in really harmful ways.
And that brings us to the bigger picture. How do you think this case will shape the conversation around domestic violence and gender-based crimes in Spain and maybe even beyond?
I think this case has the potential to be a real turning point. It's already reignited the debate about machismo in a big way, but it could go even further than that.
How so?
Well, depending on the outcome of the trial, it could actually influence how domestic violence cases are handled legally in the future, how evidence is presented, how victims are treated.
So this could have a ripple effect throughout the entire justice system.
Exactly. We might even see changes in social policy as a result. More resources for women's shelters, awareness campaigns, educational programs, that sort of thing.
Wow. That's a lot to think about.
It is, and it'll be interesting to see how everything unfolds.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good place to leave it for our listeners today. As we wrap up this deep dive into this very complex and very important case.
It really shines a light on some serious issues.
It does. And remember, the trial is still ongoing, so there could be more twists and turns ahead. Who knows what other revelations might come out?
I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Exactly. So as you continue to follow this case, I want to leave you with a few questions to consider.
Yeah.
How does this case change your perception of machismo in Spain? Does it make you think differently about the challenges we face in tackling domestic violence all over the world?
Big questions.
They are. and they're worth thinking about. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.